So good to be in Manchester. St. A's. What a treat. What a great crowd. If I hadn't had 5 cups of coffee already, I would have felt like I had 5 cups of coffee seeing you guys here. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being out. I've done a lot of campaigning in New Hampshire over the years when I was National Party Chair with your state chair, my friend Raymond Buckley. I've campaigned with Gene, who is a dear friend, but this is my first trip now as VP nominee, and I intend to be back a lot because New Hampshire is very, very important. Carol Shea Porter is here. I had a chance to visit with Carol. Say hello. Donna Susi and Lou D'Alessandro, give them a big round of applause. And then your executive counselor, Chris Pappas, give him a big round. New Hampshire has great elected officials, great party officials. You guys have a real tradition of grassroots, person-to-person democracy, and that is something that all the negative ads in the world can't take the place of person to person, and nobody does it better than New Hampshire, so give yourselves a big round. I'm also very glad to be here at St. Anselm's. I've been here once before. The patriarch of my dad's side of the family, the Kaines, Coleman Farrell, went to a Benedictine Abbey in Kansas when he was about 14 years old and stayed there his entire life, became the librarian for Benedictine College, and then eventually the librarian for the monks at the Abbey until he passed. So Benedictine education is something that I just honor. So thanks to St. A's for hosting us today, for your Institute of Politics. Well, what I want to do is just talk about this race. I'm going to first tell you how proud I am, how humbled I am, how excited I am to be part of this ticket. I want to then talk about jobs and compare the records and proposal of Hillary Clinton, a "you're hired" president, against Donald Trump, a "you're fired" president. And then I want to talk about the character of these two people, and then talk about the work we need to do between now and November 8th. But let me just start with how proud I am to be part of this ticket. Hillary Clinton called me at 7:32 3 weeks ago yesterday. Not that I'm counting, not that it was one of the most memorable events in my life. And when she did, I was so honored to be on a ticket with her. Hillary Clinton is one remarkable woman and public servant. If you saw didn't President Obama give a great speech at the convention in Philadelphia? It was great. It was great for so many reasons, but especially because President Obama just talked about Hillary. He said, boy, I know this job now, and I've got the gray hair to prove it. And I'll tell you something. Hillary Clinton is the best qualified person, the best prepared person to run for president for a major party, probably forever. And he nailed it when he said that. Absolutely the case. Absolutely the case. When I worked with Jesuit missionaries in Honduras for a year in the middle of, Jesuits are an applause line. Wow. Even in a Benedictine college. In Honduras, the best compliment you could pay to somebody was to, it's funny, was to say that they were listo, which means that would be translated into ready. We use ready a little differently in English. We're ready to go to the store or ready to do something. But listo in Spanish means like battle-tested, prepared, never backing down, never falling short, willing to just get up and keep on going. Hillary Clinton is lista, folks. I mean, absolutely, she's lista. And so that's why I was honored to be on the ticket. But the second reason that's just very personal to me is this. When Hillary and I were on stage amidst all the balloons falling, my mom, who's 81, was there with me. And she said to me, "This is the best night of my life." Now, At least part of that was because of me, because if I hadn't been nominee, I don't think she would have been standing up on stage. But what she meant really was, I am here as this party is nominating a woman to be president for the first time in the history of this country. I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. The way to look at our country in Virginia, like New Hampshire, we love history. The way to look at our country is we're just on this march. Thomas Jefferson started off by saying equality will be our North Star. That's what we're going to orient by. They weren't living equally then. There were slaves. Women couldn't vote. I mean, they weren't living equally then, but for some reason they said, but that's going to be the North Star that we're going to orient to. And for 240 years, that has been the North Star. And we're imperfect because we're imperfect people, and we've had to knock down one barrier after the next, get rid of slavery, battle so that people could be treated the same if they had different religious beliefs, battle so that women after 144 years could get the right to vote, and now 100 years later. So we've had to knock down all these barriers, and that was why my mom was so happy. And when Hillary asked me if I'd be a running mate, what went through my mind was, I've been in politics 22 years now, local, state, federal. How many strong women have helped me achieve what I've achieved in politics? Campaign managers, donors, volunteers, cabinet secretaries when I was governor, key staffers. Our voters in this country are more women than men, especially on the Democratic side. So many strong women, like my friend Jean Shaheen, a history-making strong woman, the only person in the history of the United States who has been a governor and senator as a woman. It's funny that I think she'll have a second one soon, and then there will be two, and both from New Hampshire. But joining a team and being able to support a strong woman president, it just makes me feel really, really good. And I think there's a lot of strong men in this country who are very excited about the chance to support a strong woman president, just like strong women have always stood up and supported us. So that's why I'm so proud to be here with you today. I'm so proud to be with Jean. As she said, we served together on armed services and foreign relations. I've learned so much from her since coming into the Senate in 2013, and I really look forward to this partnership continuing in a new way after November 8th. So it's an exciting time. It's exciting, but a lot's at stake. A lot is at stake. We have to, have that upbeat, can-do, positive attitude. And I think if you watched the Democratic Convention, didn't you see how we were upbeat, positive, patriotic, can-do, right? That's who we are. That's who we are. We showed America, we showed the world that's who we are. If you watched the other convention in Cleveland, you saw something very different. It was like doom and gloom and blame America first. People have said to me, that was a dark vision of America, and I've said, that was no vision of America. That was a guided tour through the mind of Donald J. Trump, which is a very frightening place to be. A very frightening place to be. But let me tell you, I just want to tell you kind of two things that are at stake. We could talk about two things: the economy and jobs, and then the character of the person that sits in the Oval Office. So let's talk about the economy and jobs. For Hillary Clinton, the most important thing we need to do is to build an economy that not only grows, but an economy where the growth is shared and where everybody has a ladder that they can climb to achieve what their dreams are. An economy that works for everybody, not just those at the top. That is Hillary Clinton's top priority. Is that your priority? Is that your priority? Hillary Clinton will be your hired president. She grew up in a small family business. Her dad ran a drape making and fabric printing business in the suburbs of Chicago. And she talks about, helping out with the orders and helping out with the deliveries and seeing how hard her dad had to work. Small businesses are the backbone of the American economy. I grew up in the same kind of a house. My dad owned an ironworking shop that was ironworker organized, 5 employees in a bad year, 7 or 8 in a good year, plus my mom, plus my 2 brothers and me. Classic small business that's the backbone of our economy. And Hillary's got an economic plan that's very geared toward the success of our small businesses and the success of our families. She said this: in the first 100 days, her top priority is to introduce the most comprehensive plan to increase jobs that we've done in this country since World War II. Since World War II. Now, elements. Major investments in research and infrastructure, road, rail, airport, ports, our electricity grid, high-speed broadband all over the country. We make these major investments where we can hire people today and raise our platform of success for decades. You do that. You put into our economy notions of shared prosperity. Profit sharing. Let's make it easier for companies to have profit sharing with their employees so that everybody has a stake. We give people the skills they need to be successful in this economy, starting with early childhood education. We got any educators in the house? Got educators. Hillary and I are huge early education supporters because somebody once told me it's easier to build a child than repair an adult. If you start early with wise investments, then everything is going to go better. And so Hillary's focused on that, focused on curricular innovation in K-12, focused on enabling us to have college in this country that's debt-free. We can do this. We can do this. Other nations do it, and we can do it too. And then also having not just college be strong, but how about union apprenticeship programs and career and technical training so we can do that? We have to have support for families, and so what that means is, how about pay equity for women? That would be one of the best things we could do to make the economy strong. How about making sure that we protect the basic safety net programs? Let's shore up and even make better Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare. These are some of the most important programs that we have in this country. Hillary's got a great plan that she's been rolling out in the last couple of days, tax credits for child care. We know how hard it is, how expensive it is. Nobody should have to pay more than 10% of their income for child care. Some families now pay up to 40%, and that shouldn't be the case. And finally, we've got to raise the minimum wage to make it a livable wage. We have to. We have to. This is... I want to be real clear about this minimum wage issue because this really separates us from Trump, who says he doesn't believe in a federal minimum wage at all. In this country right now, if you work and you've got a dependent or two, and you work full-time for minimum wage, and about 65% of those who work for minimum wage are women, if you do that, you will be below the poverty level. Now, we tell people every day, you should work hard in this country. If you work hard, you'll get ahead. We preach the value of hard work. But if we say those words, but we have a minimum wage where you work full-time with a dependent and you're below the poverty level, then we don't mean what we say. If we think work is hard, and that's what we want to encourage, and if we think work is dignified, then we ought to have policies that treat work as dignified, and that's why we've got to have a minimum wage that allows people to have the dignity of being able to live above the poverty level. And then finally, on the jobs front, Hillary says, and we got to pay for this. We're not going to do this by busting the deficit. So we need to pay for it. And the way we pay for it is this. We go to where the growth in the economy has come. And as we've grown out of recession, we are growing, but the growth has been overwhelmingly among the few, among the wealthiest, large corporations. We want them to do well. That's great. But we got to have an economy that works for everybody, and so we will have taxes at the upper end and reinvest into these programs, and that'll help everybody even those with the additional taxes. It will help everybody do better if we have a society that's stronger and an economy that works better, and that's what she's going to do. That's what she's going to do. That's the Hillary Clinton jobs plan. All you have to do is go HillaryClinton.com, and you can find all the details. She feels like she owes you to the details, right? You know, she said during her speech at the convention, some people criticize me as being kind of wonky, she said, but I think the details, if it's about you or your family or your health care or your job or your community, it's not just a detail, it's kind of a big deal, and I ought to tell you what it is. Now compare that with the "you're fired" guy. Okay, the "you're fired" guy. I think it's poetic justice that the thing we all know about Donald Trump is those two words, "you're fired." That's what we know about him. And my prediction is when this campaign is all over and people have forgotten the losing campaign that he ran, the two words they will remember about Donald Trump is "you're fired." That's what they'll remember. That's what they'll remember. Trump's plan is to say, we're going to be rich, but if you ask him about the details, we're going to be great. We're going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. Whatever he says, what are the details? He just says, believe me. Believe me. Is there anybody in this room who believes one word that Donald Trump says? We're not gullible people, folks. And sadly, Donald Trump has a history of saying believe me to people and having people believe him and having them end up really hurt. You know, he's built casinos and golf courses and had small contractors just like my dad's do the work and feel proud to do the work, and then at the end of the day he won't pay them and they get stiffed or they get a few cents on the dollar and their businesses even go bankrupt. They got hurt because they believed Donald Trump. Or retirees in Florida at condo projects gave them money for down payments and they lost a lot of their savings and they never got their condos. They got hurt because they believed Donald Trump. Or students, including veterans, who saw some flashy ad or brochure about the great Trump University and they gave him thousands of dollars and they ended up with some that wasn't even worth the paper it was written on. They got hurt because they believed Donald Trump. We are too great a nation to believe Donald Trump. We just can't do it. We can't do it. And every week he gives us a new reason not to believe him. Even after he became the nominee, for some reason he's still going around talking about how I think Ted Cruz's father was palling around with Lee Harvey Oswald and may have been involved in the JFK assassination. I think President Obama was the founder of ISIS. This guy will make up anything. And we are not gullible people. We're not going to let him pull the wool over our eyes. Now, I'm not saying to you, believe me either. Let's talk about the Clinton plan and the Trump plan. Don't believe me. Moody's Analytic is the best independent economic analyst in this country, and they're not Democrats. The head economist for Moody's is a guy, Mark Zandi, who was John McCain's chief economist when McCain ran for president in 2008. Moody's has analyzed the Clinton plan and the Trump plan, and here's what he says. If Hillary Clinton is elected, and if her plan is implemented, the economy will grow by 10 million jobs in the first term of Hillary Clinton and will be in a significant recovery. That's so powerful. That's so powerful. She'll be a "you're hired" president. If Donald Trump, on the other hand, is elected, and if his plan gets implemented, what Moody's says is this: the nation will lose 3.5 million jobs and we will be, quote, in a lengthy recession. He'll be a "you're fired" president. That's who Donald Trump is. Maya Angelou has a great line: when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Donald Trump has shown us who he is. He'll be a "you're fired" president, and that's why we can't put him in office. And that's why we've got to elect Hillary Clinton. Second thing I want to talk about is character. I said on the economy, it's do you want a "you're fired" president or "you're hired" president. On character, I think it's a pretty simple one to you. Do you want a kids and family first president, or do you want a me first president? I mean, it's just not that hard. Here is the way, here's a tip, I guess. I've been in politics for 22 years. To know about the character of somebody in office, this is the test that I think is the best test. Look to see whether they have a passion in their life that they had before they were in politics. And look to see if they've held on to that passion throughout their life, through thick or thin, through wins and losses, through good times and bad, whether they're in office or out of office. Have they held on to that passion? And if you see that they have consistently held on to that passion, that's consistency and trustworthiness and character. And friends, Hillary Clinton has that passion so clearly, so clearly, so clearly. Everybody in this room has that passion, maybe multiple passions that drive you forward. Hillary was in a Methodist youth group in her suburb of Chicago as a kid, had a great pastor, took her to see MLK speak in downtown Chicago, exposed her to issues that she wasn't familiar with, and she developed a passion for helping families and kids succeed. As a lawyer coming out of Yale, could have gone to Wall Street. No, went with the Children's Legal Defense Fund to try to fight for the rights of kids to integrated schooling or a fair juvenile justice system. And then as First Lady in Arkansas, a state with a tough record on maternal and infant health, working to expand health care options. And then as First Lady of the United States, you know the story. Hillary was the front of the early effort to try to do health care in this country. They branded it Hillary Care. They ran ads against her. They beat her. We couldn't get health care done during the Clinton administration. But here's what character does, folks. When she lost with Hillary Care, she didn't just say, okay, I'll do something else. What she said is, we couldn't get everything we wanted. I mean, how many of us, raise your hand if in life you couldn't get everything you wanted, right? Or you fell short. Here, and she did. But what she said is, okay, we couldn't get universal health care. Can we figure out a way in this country, the greatest and wealthiest country on earth, to get health insurance for every low-income child so that kids can be guaranteed health care if they get sick and get ill, and their parents won't have to go to bed at night with a nagging voice in their ear, what happens tomorrow if my kid gets sick or if my kid's in an auto accident? And Hillary Clinton pushed through the CHIP program. 8 million children in this country have health insurance because Hillary Clinton wouldn't back down and got up off the mat to keep fighting for families and children. As a senator from New York, fought for military families, made that a critical thing. I'm one of 2 senators that have a child in the military. I pay attention. I got one right here. Good job, Blue Star Mom. I pay attention. I pay attention to who's focusing on military families. Hillary was a champion. And after 9/11, when first responders started to get ill, those who had saved, we called them heroes. It was Hillary Clinton that led the fight to make sure that our first responders who responded to the Pentagon and the World Trade Center could have the health care that they need. So you get my point on this character thing. She's got a demonstrated track record of something long before she was in politics that she cares about, and she's cared about it all the way through. And she's right. If our families and children are successful, then everything else in our society is going to be going very, very well. It's a passion that's important. It's a passion that serves. That tells you about her character. Now, Donald Trump, he has a consistent interest that he's been focused on throughout his whole life. And it is Donald J. Trump. It's himself. It's himself. I mean, tell me one issue of public policy that Donald Trump has been known as being passionate about before he decided he wanted to be president of the United States. Bankruptcy law. Right, okay, bankruptcy laws. Donald Trump is just interested in himself. None of the great presidents in this country are people that are known for putting themselves first. When JFK was inaugurated in 1961, he didn't say, well, don't ask what you can do for your country, just ask what your country can do for me. He didn't say that. Our great presidents are people who put others first, who put their country first, and that's not who Donald Trump is. And I'll give you the latest example of this. Jeannie got into this, and I'm going to steal some of her lines because she did a good job. Let's talk about this tax issue. This is a big deal. Every president since Richard Nixon, and including Richard Nixon, now he was not known for the most elevated ethical standards, but I will say, even Richard Nixon released his tax returns to the public when he was running for president because he said, as has every major party nominee of both parties since, the American public have a right to see my tax returns. They should see what my financial status is. They should see who I have connections with. They should see if I am paying the taxes that support our veterans, that support our military, that support our social services. They should see whether I'm generous to charity or whether I'm stingy. Everybody's done it. Trump is not doing it. Trump is not doing it. He says the rules that apply to everybody else do not apply to Donald J. Trump. Now, Jeannie did a good job of telling you, like, what doesn't he want to show? What doesn't he want to show? It could be, you know, he brags about all this stuff he's done for charity, but there's been some good articles to suggest that's all brags and it's not really backed up. In fact, there was one just this week where he's been claiming to have given $20 million to St. Jude's Hospital, and the Washington Post dug into it and could find no record of any such gift, He's talked about all these things he's done for veterans, and they actually caught him that even after he did this kind of telethon for veterans, he hadn't given the money to veterans, and so they started to pressure him. And then once they did, he had to, like, you know, come clean about it and finally write a check or two. So we might find that this generosity that he's claiming is just smoke and mirrors. I think that's probably the case. I'll tell you what I think we would find. We would find, yesterday Hillary released her 2015 tax return. The Clintons have been producing their tax returns publicly every year since 1977. My wife and I put out 10 years of tax returns yesterday, right? 10 years. You have a right to know. You have a right to know. I don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. You have a right to know. Here's what I think you'd find if Donald Trump's tax returns come out. Because in at least a couple of instances in the 80s and 90s, his tax returns did get produced, and it showed that he paid no taxes, none. And he's bragged about using every trick and artifice he can to pay no taxes. Why does that matter? Well, let's just focus on this one for a minute. Donald Trump says he's going to be a great commander-in-chief for the military. Who supports the military? I mean, we pay taxes to support the military. 2 million young men and women who volunteer in a time of war, great patriotic people who we're really proud of. We're paying to support them. But the guy who wants to be commander-in-chief brags about how little taxes he pays. If you haven't been supporting the military during your entire life, don't tell me you'll suddenly start if you get to be commander-in-chief. I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe it for a minute. Donald Trump says, I'm going to be great for the veterans. I love veterans. I'm going to be great for them. Forget about the fact that I'm not doing the charitables that I said I would. But again, if you look at a guy's tax return and you find that he's using every trick and dodge he can to not pay any taxes, then there's a guy who's trying to dodge supporting our veterans. And you do that your whole life, and then you tell me all of a sudden, I'm going to be great for the veterans. I don't believe one word of that. He's not going to be a president for the veterans because he hasn't cared about the veterans during his life. So on the character side, this thing's a slam dunk. We've got a me first guy in Donald Trump, who it's all about him, who's now trying to convince us that he suddenly cares about people other than him. And you got a Hillary Clinton who long before she was in politics demonstrated that she cared about others in ways that didn't necessarily benefit her, but that showed us who her heart is and who she'll value if she's in. So on the character question, I think it's pretty darn clear. It's pretty darn clear. The last thing the tax return might show us, if Trump produced his tax return, then it might show investments that are connected to people we'd have some questions about. It might also show us, in right down to the cent, how much he would benefit by the tax plan he just put down on the table. You know, we've been able, at least on the estate tax, to say, well, you're going to benefit to the billions if you get rid of the estate tax. But there's other tax proposals that he's making, and if he gave us his tax return, we could look at it and say, well, isn't that interesting? You are proposing a tax plan that is going to benefit Donald J. Trump more than anybody else in this country. And that may be one of the reasons he doesn't want to release it. Not being willing to be straight up with the American public, that's a fundamental character question. And that's another reason we have to make sure we vote for Hillary. She's got the strong character to lead this nation. She's not a me-firster. She's a kids and family firster. All right, well, last thing is this. I know it's hot. And I do appreciate you guys giving me Virginia weather here. I mean, I feel right at home doing a rally like this. It's Virginia weather. I'll just conclude and say this. This is going to be a challenging race. We do like the polling numbers we're seeing. We'd rather be in our spot than the other guy's spot right now. I'll be honest. But this campaign year has been a year of surprises. I mean, there have been polls that have been wrong. There have been pundits that have been wrong. There have been primaries that seem like they'd go one way, that went another way. Very few people predicted that Donald Trump would be the nominee. You can look at elections in other parts of the world, like the election in Britain about the Brexit vote. A lot of people got that wrong. So what we see is a time of real dramatic choice on fundamental civil rights issues like the one I talked about when I started off. We got a North Star out there that we're moving toward. Do we want to suddenly become a country where it's okay to ridicule a disabled person and make fun of them? Do we want to be a country where we punish people if they're of the wrong religion, like Donald Trump seems to want to do? That's what's at stake in an election like this. And in an unpredictable year, we can't take anything for granted, and I know we don't, and I know you don't. New Hampshire is a lot like Virginia. We're battleground states. This thing is going to be hand-to-hand combat between now and November 8th. There's going to be a lot of negative ads on TV. You won't know who's running them because they don't have to disclose where they get their money in this post-Citizens United world. So we have to assume this will be hard. But nothing good in life is ever easy. Hillary Clinton would be the first woman president of the United States. If that would have been easy, it would have happened. It's going to be hard, or it would have happened. So we have to assume that this closing stretch is going to be very, very hard. But I'm up to it. I'm 8-0 in elections. I've never lost one. Most of my races, I will say, not to give you, any nerves, most of my races are really close. I never win by much. I mean, here's a tip. If you're barely likable enough going to politics, you just have to get 51% of the people to like you. I mean, this thing will be hard, and it will be close, but things that are hard, things that are important are meant to be hard. But I know you. I've watched what happens in New Hampshire. I've watched my friend Jeanne Shaheen and others, and I know the work that you can do. So with the stakes this high, with the choice this clear, with the answer on November 8th, even being less about the candidates than America looking in the mirror and what is it that we're going to see there? Are we going to see that we're moving forward, or we see that we're moving backward? That is the choice. I just want to ask you, Granite Staters, do all you can. Let's win New Hampshire. Let's make history on November 8th, and then we'll make history every day thereafter, building an economy that works for all. Thank you guys for having me. Thanks, St. A's. Let's go out and win. Appreciate it.